All right, let's go ahead and get started. We've got a couple people in here, and then we'll go ahead and give everyone else a couple more minutes to kind of trickle on in. But Ruthie, I'll let you take it away.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so my name is Ruthie Ditzler, and I'm excited to be talking today to share 5 tips for new grads who are navigating the current job market. So I know there's a lot of new grads on the scene, people who just finished up school. Congratulations. So I am here to offer some tips and tricks and things that I wish I had known when I was graduating. So that is the plan for today. So here's our agenda, what we're going to cover. We'll do some quick introductions for both myself and Brandy and share a little bit more about the Talent Career Coaching Collective. I'll give you a quick overview of the job market today and trends that I'm seeing with clients that I work with. We'll go through my 5 tips for recent grads. There will be time at the end for Q&A, and I will also make sure to save time to share a special offer that I have. Okay, so let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. Brandy, do you want to start with a quick introduction?
Sure. My name is Brandy Oldham. I am the owner and founding coach here at Talent Career Coaching. We are based in Vancouver, Washington, but we serve clients all across the United States at any stage in their career. We've got myself at the helm, but then we also have what's called the Coaching Collective underneath our brand, where we bring career coaches that emphasize and have specialties in various areas. Ruthie's obviously is in new grads and early career professionals. But if you are looking for someone tailored to your experience, your needs, please reach out. We're happy to get you in touch with the right coach. All of us are here to support you.
Awesome. And yeah, like Brandy said, my name is Ruthie. I have worked as a career coach for several years and have over a decade of experience in career development work. My expertise and focus, I tend to work with clients who are earlier in their career, folks who are graduating or getting ready to graduate and are seeking more clarity around their next steps. And I'm trained as a certified youth resilience coach and also work at a college as a career advisor at a local college here in Oregon. Um, so excited to share some of what I know today. And Brandy did a quick overview about the coaching collective, but yeah, we have lots of different areas where we could support folks. We know that it's a lot of work to, your career is a big life focus, and we don't think you should have to navigate that alone. So, regardless of where you are in your career, if you're just starting out, if you're mid career and reevaluating, wanting to strategize about promotions, um, we've got someone who can support you in that area. All right. And one thing before I get started is Brandy just posted in the chat. She will be monitoring the Q&A throughout this webinar, and you're also welcome to message her directly if you have any technical issues or questions that come up. And we'll make sure to save time at the end to address any of those questions. Okay, so a little bit about me. Why do I do this work, and why am I so passionate about working with new grads in particular? I think back to when I graduated from college. I was completely lost about what I was going to do next. I felt like I'd had lots of support at school to, decide what I wanted to study, excuse me, but there was not support around how to connect that with a career once I finished school. So I just felt completely paralyzed by all of the different options. I didn't know how to go about choosing a direction. And so as I graduated from school in that first year, I was actually juggling 3 jobs and I had 2 unpaid internships because my solution to like trying to figure it out was like, okay, I'll just try a little bit of everything and hope that there's some clarity that comes from that. Where that led me is to burnout. And so over, the course of my 20s, I burnt out twice, really finding myself in jobs where I knew I could do the work and I was doing a good job, but they're just at the end of the day, I left feeling drained and unsatisfied and I couldn't figure out what was going on. Um, so it wasn't until I, slowed down, I actually took the time to work with a career coach myself, reflected on my strengths and what was good, what I was good at, what filled my cup, and that led me on a path to doing what I do today. So I'm a big advocate for, taking the time to do self-reflection, learning different strategies at the beginning of your career, because I think that that can save people a lot of time and angst that they might spend kind of spinning their wheels trying to figure out which direction to head. So that is what brings me here today. And yeah, I just wanted to do a quick overview, kind of like the state of the job market right now. So we know it is rough out there. Our clients are, consistently dealing with long stretches of time, where they're actively job seeking and just not getting a lot of traction. I work with clients who are spending upwards of 6 or 9 months looking for a job. And it's particularly challenging right now for folks who are looking for entry level positions. As we know, there have been layoffs, there have been hiring freezes in several industries. And what that's done is really flooded the entry level market with more applicants than there are openings. There's also just a lot of confusion out there, people seeing entry level roles where they're asking for 2 to 3 years of experience. So there's kind of like that catch 22. I don't have the experience to get the job, but how do I get the experience? It's sort of like the chicken and the egg. And a lot of jobs out there, being posted for internal hires, or it's just confusing and hard to know if like the job postings are really real. The other thing that everyone's talking about today is AI, right? And so I work with clients who are using AI, they're using those tools in their job search. And we know that resumes and cover letters and applications are screened by automated systems. So it's sort of this time where everyone's using AI to create their job search assets, and then they're being screened by AI. But like, how do you stand out as a human and really differentiate yourself from all of these very similar looking AI optimized resumes? So what that means is, we've always known how important personal connections and networking was to a job search, but now we know that networking is more essential than it's ever been. So many opportunities are not posted publicly, especially in, mission-driven or competitive sectors. And that can be really intimidating for, if you're a student or a recent grad, where you know that you should be out there talking to people, but most schools don't teach you how to network in a real relationship-based way. So I know that clients are very wary of, coming across as just like being transactional, like they want something from someone, and feel super uncomfortable with how to like initiate those conversations. And there's a lot of tension there because it is like so important. It's such important aspect of your job search. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. The other thing here is just wanted to identify and some common client experiences. And if this is how you're feeling, just validate that it's not just you. You're not alone. This is very common. It's common to feel this way, regardless of like how the job market, if it was a booming job market, new grads would still be feeling this way. And then coupled with what's going on in the economy right now makes it even more challenging. So people I worked with are generally feeling a lack of direction or clarity, right? Like this pressure, like you should have a plan, you should know what you're doing, but like how do you actually execute on that? Like how do you even know like what your strengths are or what your options are? And I totally relate to that. That's exactly how I felt when I graduated. And it leads to that feeling of being paralyzed, right? Where there's so many different directions you could go. It's like, how do you know where to start? The other thing that's happening right now, which is just so unfortunate, but is very common, is that low response rate and people getting ghosted. So I was working with a client just yesterday who said she's been applying to jobs for over a year and a half, off and on, and has not received a single invitation for an interview yet. Okay, so people are submitting dozens or hundreds of resumes and not hearing back. And even when people are getting to interviews, oftentimes, they might have the first round interview, but then there's no follow up or closure, and they don't hear back about getting invited to a second interview. Also, just generally like confusion about how to talk about themselves. So, oftentimes, recent grads really struggle to articulate what they have to offer, especially if you've had kind of unrelated jobs or internships or academic experiences. It's like, how do you create this cohesive career kind of branded story about who you are and what you have to offer? And so, if you are feeling unsure of how to do that, what that typically leads to is people submitting really generic applications or having just a generic resume that doesn't stand out. I mentioned that hesitation or discomfort with networking, right? Knowing that networking matters, but feeling super awkward about initiating the conversation, unsure how to approach people without it feeling like just really transactional and yeah, just kind of like a oof, like don't want to approach people that way. Um, and feeling like there's pressure to ask for a job, but then like that also feels awkward and might lead you to avoid even connecting with people in the first place. And then finally, just want to name imposter syndrome and burnout. These are things that, we work with clients across all stages of their career, and this is present for folks across all stages, but I think it's particularly relevant for younger, early career professionals. That feeling of imposter syndrome, I think coupled with just social media, and we're also connected with what's going on in the world. So seeing your peers, comparing yourself to what's going on LinkedIn or social media, that feeling of being behind, or like failing before you've even started, like those are all very common experiences. So if you're experiencing any of this, if you're feeling any of these things that I've mentioned, you're not alone. It's common. So let's talk through, I've got 5 tips I want to highlight that are things that you can do to combat these challenging experiences. Okay, so tip number 1, and I wish this is the thing that I'm just like, I wish that someone had helped me with this when I was graduating from school, is align before you apply. And what I mean by that is a lot of times I'm talking to clients who are just, we call it like spray and pray, or they're throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? You're just out there, you're looking for job listings, you're just finding anything that sounds like you could do that thing and then submitting your application for that, okay? And just, it's like, there's no kind of focus to what it is that you're doing. You're just like, a number of applications, I'm gonna like put myself out there, okay? The problem with that is that it's like the less focused you are, the harder it is to get traction in any one direction. And it starts to feel super overwhelming. And taking the time now, especially if you're a new grad or someone earlier in your career, taking the time now to invest in self reflection, like pausing to reflect, making sure your job search is more focused, it becomes easier to find what you're looking for. And it's easier to have, to get other people to help you find what you're looking for as well. So, a couple of things that I recommend here. I like to do something called a work history reflection, or if you're a recent grad, this can just kind of be a brain dump of the things that you've done throughout the course of your academic history, and it's just like projects that you've worked on. It is things that have really like lit you up, things that you've loved doing. It's getting like all of your, jobs that you've had, any volunteer or leadership experience, like getting that all down into one place where you can start to see themes and patterns that might be obvious when you've like, collected everything into one centralized location. And just getting out there, like, yeah, what are the 10 most recent projects or, jobs that you've worked on? What are things that you want to be known for? Like, what are your favorite projects or proudest accomplishments? Taking some time, just get that down on paper. The other thing I really like doing is something called an energizing versus draining audit. So, thinking back on work that you've done in the past, or if you're someone who is currently employed, taking the time to reflect on your day to day activities and like what fills your cup and what empties it, right? Different, like as you go about your day, what tasks are you in flow state when you're doing that thing, right? Where you lose track of time, where you're absolutely immersed in what you're doing. And then what are the things that you're just procrastinating forever because it's like you absolutely dread this thing and you don't want to do it. And that can be, if you're not currently working, if you're a student, you can think back on, things that you did on campus or projects, classes that you worked on, where you're identifying again, like what's giving you energy and what's leaving you drained. Okay. And then what you can do is look for themes. Okay. So what you're looking for is, um, you know, pulling out themes as you're reflecting. So thinking about, what do people often come to me for help with? You're looking at, what energizes me when I'm doing it? Like what matters most to me in a work environment? What are things that I'm like topics or communities I naturally care about? And this is a really great use of AI if you're someone who has been using generative AI in your job search, is to compile all of the things that you've written, this brain dump that you've done. You can enter that into a chat bot and ask it to pull out themes that it's seeing in that information. And oftentimes you might get some interesting reflection there. And so once you've done all of this stuff, you're looking for patterns, you're looking for these clues. I recommend creating a personal kind of career criteria list. So this is where you are like, here's what I'm good at, right? Here are my strengths. Here are what my values are. Here's what I care about when I'm working with an employer. Do I want to work at a big company or a small company? Do I care about work-life balance? Do I care about salary? There are so many different things that we consider when we're evaluating a job. What matters most to you? Put it on the list there. And you'll have that then as you're looking at job listings. So it helps you filter and you can say, oh yeah, this is a job that I am feeling more confident about applying for because I see that it lines up with some of these things that energize me. I see that it aligns with my values. I understand that this company has some of the characteristics I'm looking for. So yes, this is a job that feels more focused, like it's worth spending my time to apply. Okay. And then the other thing is just thinking through like stepping stone moves. And what I mean by that is oftentimes people feel paralyzed because they feel the pressure, like you're gonna pick a job and then you've picked that job and you're stuck in that thing for the rest of your life. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true, right? Each job that you take, each opportunity in your career is gonna give you more information and more data to make decisions about how to move forward in your career. So instead of waiting for that dream job that checks all your boxes and might be keeping you kind of spinning your wheels or paralyzed, think about finding a job. Will this role teach me something new? Will I be working with people that I can learn from? Does this align with at least one of my core values? And just know that that forward movement is going to give you more clarity, and like taking action is going to help you build confidence and not to get stuck waiting for like the perfect thing. Okay. So, tip number 2, keep it focused when we're thinking about resumes. So, you've gotten a little bit more, you have your career criteria list, you've done some self reflection on your strengths and your interests and your values. And so then you're feeling ready to apply. Okay. So, when we're thinking about creating a resume, what I often see when I'm working with new grads is they are, one, sharing too much information that's not relevant, and two, oftentimes they're sharing what they did, sort of what their job duties were, and they're missing out on sharing the impact, which is what employers really care about. Okay. So, a resume is a tool, and its job is to get you in the door for an interview. The way you do that is by sharing the most relevant information consolidated to make it easy for that person who's reading your resume to get a very clear picture of what you have to offer and how it's relevant to the job. Okay. And I always encourage people to think of the 6-second rule. Okay. So research shows that when someone's scanning your resume, they take about 6 seconds to do that initial first pass, as they're deciding, whether or not to dig deeper into the resume. Okay, so you have 6 seconds to grab someone's attention and help them connect the dots to understand, oh yeah, this person is a qualified candidate. I want to learn more about them. Okay, so as someone's skimming, it's very important that we create targeted resumes to so that it's very clear, right? Clarity matters more than length or fancy formatting or anything like that. Okay. So one of the things that we do here at Talent Career Coaching, something I work on a lot with students, and something that's really impactful if you do at the beginning of your career, is to create something called a comprehensive resume. And that work history reflection you did from tip number 1 can be it's the great base for your comprehensive resume. Okay. Which is essentially a centralized document where you keep track of everything you've ever accomplished professionally and academically. This is going to have all of your skills, your areas of expertise. It's going to have all of your work experience, projects from school, education, certifications. All of that stuff lives in one centralized document. And you can use that then to really easily drag and drop and create tailored resumes. And it helps avoid that situation where you're applying for jobs, you're changing and tweaking things slightly from one job to the next. And then all of a sudden you have 40 different versions of your resume and it's super hard to keep track of. So, comprehensive centralized document with everything in there. And then you can use that to pick and choose what you're going to share based on the job description, right? Customizing your resume by matching bullet points to what they're asking for on the job description. The other thing that is super important, and I work with college students every day where we're talking about results-oriented resumes. Okay. So the temptation with resumes, what most people do is they regurgitate the job description that they were hired for, essentially. They're sharing what they did, okay, in their position. What employers really care about is the impact that you had on the company or, the organization, if you're volunteering, if it's a club where you're in a leadership position. What was the impact that you had? Not just what you did. And how did you do the thing? What's your special sauce? What differentiates you from anyone else who's doing a similar position? Okay. So one thing you can search for online is it's called the PAR method, is something that's helpful. PAR, problem action results. Or Google, the company actually uses something called the XYZ method. So those are helpful ways to think of creating results-oriented bullet points. But here's an example on the screen where instead of saying planned and promoted a campus event, you could rephrase that. The impact of planning and promoting a campus event is that you increase the club's visibility, right? So then saying dramatically increased club's visibility by planning and promoting a campus event that drew 150 plus attendees and raised $2,000 for a local nonprofit. Okay, so we understand that the important thing about what you did is not just that you planned and promoted it, but we understand the impact that that then had on the club you were working for, and we're understanding more about the scope. Okay, and that those results-oriented bullet points are going to be so much more impactful when someone's reviewing your resume. Okay, so your resume is not your life story. It's a highlight reel, okay? It's what makes you a strong candidate for this specific job. So it's important to think relevant, think recent, as opposed to this is everything I've ever done. Okay, so resume, the next thing to think about is LinkedIn, okay? So we also want to have our LinkedIn optimized and ready to go to help support us. And a big thing I do when I'm working with students is thinking about how we can make LinkedIn future facing, okay? So you want to differentiate your LinkedIn from your resume, and it's social media. This is free real estate to help you understand free real estate where you can promote like other interests, right? You can share so much more about yourself than you ever would in a resume. So your headline and your about section are the most prime real estate in this keyword-based algorithm, okay? So instead of saying, you want to put yourself in a hiring manager's shoes and think about when someone's searching for a candidate online, what they would be searching for. So instead of saying recent graduates seeking new opportunities, if you are a data science student, you want to say data analyst, right? And highlight some of the skills right across your headline. Python, R, SQL, right? Because someone is going to be searching for a data analyst. They're not going to be searching for a recent grad. Okay. You can also share your why. So why are you pursuing the path you're headed down? Why did you study the things that you did, right? That's the about section's power, where you can share. Again, it's like way more than you could ever include in your resume. Why are you passionate about what you do? How do you approach projects? What are you known for? What are you most excited about? All of that stuff is great to include in your about section. And then customize. So make this personal. Include a banner photo, include projects you've worked on or presentations, volunteer work, all of this stuff. Again, that's not going to make it onto that one-page resume, but it's a really important thing. Good ideas for things to include. Okay, tip number 4 is rethinking networking. So I mentioned that oftentimes people feel really awkward about initiating networking conversations. So I want you to think about this. Your goal is to get 20-minute conversations with as many people as you can, not job offers. Okay. And that comes through genuine curiosity, not a request for a job. Okay. So finding people who work at companies you're interested in, are working in roles you're curious to learn more about. Just seem like they're doing really cool things out there in the world. Find something you're genuinely curious about and ask them a question about that, right? Hey, Brandy, I saw that you founded a career coaching company. I'm really curious about what your experience is like being an entrepreneur and how it has been to evolve your business over time. Would you be open to a short chat? Right? Do you have 20 minutes in the next couple of weeks where I can ask you some questions about your experience? Okay. People love to help and generally are very flattered when you reach out to them and they're like, wow, you're reaching out to me specifically. And all I have to do is show up for 20 minutes and tell you about my life, right? It's a very easy ask. Okay. And um, rather than coming at someone with like, oh my gosh, I need a job. Can you help me find a job? You can ask them questions like, what advice would you give to someone in my position who's a new grad, out here in the world? And then they may naturally share how you could apply for a job at their company. They may kind of just organically share that they would be happy to be a reference, stuff like that. So start with people professors, family, friends, just folks in your community. You don't have to feel like you need to reach out to strangers on the internet. Start with people you know. And at the end of every interaction, thank you so much for your time. I really loved connecting with you and learning more about X, Y, and Z. I'm trying to broaden my professional network right now. Do you know, do you have 2 or 3 other people in your network that you could connect me with? So ask people you're already speaking with for warm introductions and then follow up, right? This is a great first impression. So always follow up with a thank you, follow up with people once you've connected and had conversations with the people that they've introduced you to. People generally like to help. And once they've helped you once, research shows they're likely to continue helping you in the future. So this is a great way to get cheerleaders in your corner just by expressing interest about what they do. Okay, one more thing before I open it to Q&A is just knowing that this is a challenging job market, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. How can you protect yourself against burnout? So one of the things I would recommend is finding ways to celebrate what's working, okay, and creating a regenerative routine, creating a routine that does not burn you out. So schedule time every week to reflect, like what's going well, what are some things that you've accomplished. When we're job seeking, it can feel like you're applying it to this, like you're constantly working towards this overarching goal that you're never meeting, and so that can feel really demoralizing. So this week I reached out to 15 people and I submitted 5 job applications. You're kind of tracking all of the things that you've accomplished. And then I always recommend creating a yay folder. So this can be digital, it can be a notebook on your desk. Jot down good feedback you've gotten, conversations that went well, these things that we tend to forget throughout our busy lives. Just making sure that you're keeping track of that. Block out time for job searching. So a few hours a day, 4 to 5 days a week. Okay. Which means that, we're so much better focused when we're like we have that like focus time on our calendar. And then what that also means is that the other time that's not blocked for job searching, do things that fill your cup. Okay. Mix of kind of active job seeking tasks with reflective tasks, like thinking about values and things that matter to you that way. And then saving time to not job search. So spending time with friends, with family, get outside, get exercise, do the things that light you up. Okay. So really quick, I'm going to stop sharing. And let me see what is coming up question-wise. Brandy, what do you have?
Yeah, so I'm gonna start with some of the things that we got in the chat. Um,
Okay.
so Naomi has some questions. I'm gonna kind of ad lib here, but has a lot of experience working in a preschool, is really interested in transitioning into government or nonprofit work. Thinks the problem might be my resume is not professionally corporate. What can we do to help kind of get her over that hump into potentially government or nonprofit work?
hmm Good question. My number one recommendation for someone who is trying to transition into a field that they don't already have experience in is to focus on building connections with people in that field. I think that this is hugely powerful to one, help reiterate that that's actually the direction you want to head, right? You might have this idea in your head, like, oh, I want this type of job. And then you have conversations with people doing that work. And it's like, oh, whoa, it's either like green flag, yeah, this is reinforcing that, or red flag, never mind, like, this is not the type of work I want to do. But it's also, yeah, it just gives you insight into the process, into the hiring process. You're going to get information like resources, ideas from those people, how they navigated that same journey. And then you'll also have people in your corner, right, to help you navigate the application process, and help give you guidance about how best to target your resume, right? So oftentimes people are working on tweaking their resume first. And if you make connections with people and get that information, it's going to help you then make the changes that you need to your resume. Yeah, great question.
Yeah, I would add on to that too. Naomi, I just shot you a question just one-on-one, just trying to figure out where you're located. But if you are someone who's interested in going into government work and you're located in the Pacific Northwest, we're in the Portland metro area. For example, if you decide, I want to apply to the city of Portland, they're going to do the application on the website, but they're also going to have these events where you can go and learn more about the job.
Mm-hmm.
It matters.
Mm-hmm.
So those recruiters have, actively told us there's kind of a point system and they do check like who shows up for those events and who doesn't. So it is an extra step, but that is something, especially when you're kind of entry level trying to get your foot in the door, I would 100% make sure you're going to those events. Okay. You are not in the Portland area. Okay. So take a look to see if they are doing any sort of event like that in those areas that you're targeting, Naomi. We've got some East Coast, some Texas. So there might have some online options there. And then again, like Ruthie said, connect as much as you can. And then for nonprofit work, connection really matters. And they're usually very open to telling you all about their nonprofit. So if you're interested in that, I would really try and get a Zoom chat on the calendar with somebody if you can. Uh,
Yeah, and I love helping with networking strategies. So Naomi, if you want to just, like if you ever want 30 minutes of time where we're talking about that, wait for the end and I'll give you a special offer, but I'm always happy to chat. Okay, I see Lauren's question. Could you
Perfect.
share advice about preparing for an interview and also how to manage nerves? Great questions. Um, my advice for preparing for an interview, I really like to use the STAR method for answering behavioral interview questions. I'm someone that is very nervous going into interviews, and having a structure, situation, task, action, result, to go through when you're in fight or flight and your mind is blanking, right, can be really helpful. My other recommendation for preparing for an interview is to do your research on the company, to look at their website, to understand their values, to look very closely at the job description as a way to get clues about what the interviewer might ask you about. And then you can go through, and Brandy just shared our like a brainstorming tool for star stories. You can actually go through and say, okay, I anticipate they're going to want to know about my communication style. So what's an example I can think of in the past where I demonstrated, really great effective communication, and you map that out into the star story format so that when that a communication related question comes up in the interview, you already have that in your back pocket ready to go. And so there are common themes that interviewers are going to be asking about. And so anticipating several of those common themes, coming prepared with star stories ready to go means that you're way less likely to be caught off guard and kind of fumbling in the moment.
Yeah.
Um,
I would also
yeah,
say
thoughts.
for cut yourself some slack. You're new to this process. So,
Yeah.
the first thing I would say is if you find yourself getting really overwhelmed, I tell all of my clients, young and old, to take a deep breath, hold it for 10 seconds, and exhale. 10 seconds is not long enough for anyone to notice, but it is long enough for you to slow your heart rate and kind of
Hmm.
recalibrate your nervous system. The other thing is if you find yourself veering off and kind of going into la la land trying to answer something, and you are aware that it's happening, stop and then
Hmm.
just be honest and be like, I'm so sorry. I am nervous. And I realize I am going out in left field here. Let me start back over. That is totally normal. And honestly, your interviewer is probably going to laugh and then be like, oh my gosh, I've totally been there too, because we all have. So don't be afraid to be a human. You're not a robot in an interview as well.
Yes, 100%. Um, And then, yeah, just thinking about nerves, I like what Brandy just shared. It's okay to let your humanness come through. Stop, tell them you need a few seconds before you are going to answer. Pre-interview, right? When you're thinking about nerves, some things that I really love to do. There's conflicting evidence about power posing, but it's a placebo. To me, it doesn't matter. So power posing is finding somewhere where you can stand, like standing like Superman and just kind of like pose that way. Visualization, there's research that shows how impactful it is to visualize yourself ahead of time doing something the way that you would love to do it. So thinking through the interview, thinking through how you're going to approach answers confidently. Your mind does not distinguish between vividly imagining something and actually experiencing it. So you can do that mental rehearsal ahead of time. And then another thing I just love is like listen to your favorite music that's going to pump you up. Just like get pumped up, right? Things that just go for it. Like right before the interview, listen to your favorite song, get jazzed, get excited. Um, and know that every interview, regardless of the outcome, is practice. And it's an opportunity for you to learn about the company as much as it is for them to learn about you. And sometimes we have interviews where we understand that that's not a great company for us to work for, and that's totally okay. Um, any thoughts, Randy? I know we're at time, so
I was gonna say I don't see any other questions in the chat. Those were great ones that you all asked. If you do have other questions, we can provide you with an email you can reach out to. But I'm gonna go ahead and let Ruthie drop in some fun new things you should know about.
yeah, so just a couple things. What's coming up next? So in July, I'll lead another webinar on the 24th. This one is really about career clarity, right? So I talked a little bit about how you align before you apply. This is going to give you some practical tips there. Really thinking about how, when you're feeling unsure or stuck about your next steps, how to figure out what you actually want to do. And then if you're in the Portland metro area, I am leading an in-person vision boarding workshop, which is an amazing kind of right-brained way to tap into your goals and what matters to you. So it's doing that align before you apply, but in a visual way. So that's going to be July 10th in the evening at Dandelion Tea House in Vancouver. So this QR code will take you to our events page where you can see both of those things. And just a special offer that I wanted to share. So I know what it's like to graduate and feel unsure and to feel just super overwhelmed about what's happening. And I would love to offer 50% off an hour-long coaching session for any recent grad. So I work as a college career advisor. I have a lot of experience helping people navigate this era of their career. And these sessions are tailored to each person. So I'm going to come in and we're going to go right to work to understand what your goals are and what your challenges are that you're facing. And then you'll leave with some strategies and some action items and some actual, feeling like you have some confidence moving forward. So You can use the coupon code new grad to get that 50% off, and the QR code will take you there as well. And yeah, big thank you to everyone for joining us today. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. You can check us out on our website. That link will take you to my page to learn more about the type of clients that I work with. But in general, follow Talent Career Coaching for lots of tips and tricks from all our coaches. And we hope to see you at another webinar again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.